Millionaire marries fast food worker on a bet. What she does next leaves him stunned. The sound of sizzling oil filled the small fast food joint as Lily stood behind the counter, carefully assembling a burger. Her hands worked quickly but with precision, making sure each ingredient was perfectly placed. For her, even the simplest tasks deserved effort, something her mother had instilled in her since childhood. "Lily, orders up," her coworker called, breaking her focus. She wiped her hands on her apron and handed the tray to a waiting customer, flashing them a warm smile. It was a routine she'd repeated 100 times before, but she didn't mind. Work was work and she was grateful to have it. Across town, Ryan leaned back in his leather chair, swirling a glass of whiskey as he laughed at a joke one of his friends had just made. The private lounge was filled with the faint hum of classical music and the low murmur of conversations. Ryan loved these moments, surrounded by his closest circle, basking in the glow of success. He had it all: money, power, and the respect of everyone who mattered. Or so he thought. "All right, Ryan," said Charles, one of his oldest friends, leaning forward with a mischievous grin. "Let's see if you're as charming as you claim to be." Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What are you getting at?" Charles gestured dramatically as if announcing the plot of a grand play. "I bet you can't charm a woman completely out of your league. And I don't mean another heiress or socialite. I mean someone unexpected." The group chuckled and Ryan smirked, always up for a challenge. "Define unexpected." "A fast food worker," Charles said, his tone dripping with mock seriousness. "Someone who has nothing in common with you. No wealth, no connections. Let's see if the great Ryan can make her fall head over heels." Ryan laughed, shaking his head. "That's ridiculous. Afraid you can't do it?" Charles taunted, a glint of challenge in his eyes. Ryan's smirk deepened. He didn't back down from a dare, especially not one that questioned his charm. "Fine. You're on. What's the timeline?" 3 months, Charles replied. "Marry her within 3 months or admit defeat." The group roared with laughter, but Ryan raised his glass, sealing the bet with a toast. "You're about to owe me one, Charles." The next day, Ryan walked into the fast food joint, dressed casually but still exuding an air of confidence. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Lily, who was wiping down a table. There was something about her, a quiet determination in the way she moved, a spark in her eyes that intrigued him. "Excuse me," he said, approaching her with a charming smile. "Could I get some help here? I'm new to this menu." Lily looked up, startled. She wasn't used to customers like him, polished, self-assured, and clearly out of place in the greasy, bustling restaurant. "Sure," she said, straightening up. "What are you in the mood for?" "I don't know," Ryan replied, leaning slightly closer. "What's your favorite?" Lily raised an eyebrow, unsure if he was serious. "Depends on the day. The burgers are good, though." "Then I'll take your recommendation," Ryan said, flashing another smile. "And maybe a name to go with it?" Lily hesitated for a moment before replying. "It's Lily." "Lily," Ryan repeated, testing the name on his tongue. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ryan." She nodded politely and took his order, her demeanor professional but wary. As she walked back to the counter, Ryan watched her with a satisfied smirk. The first step was always the hardest, but he knew how to play the game. Over the next few weeks, Ryan became a regular at the fast food joint, finding excuses to strike up conversations with Lily. He learned little details about her life, how she worked long hours to help support her younger brother, how she dreamed of going back to school, and how she never let her circumstances define her. At first, Lily was cautious. She wasn't used to men like Ryan, charming, confident, and persistent. But he had a way of making her laugh, and his genuine interest in her life felt different. Still, she couldn't shake the nagging question. Why was someone like him interested in her? One evening, Ryan invited Lily out for coffee after her shift. She hesitated but eventually agreed, curious to see what lay beneath his polished exterior. They sat at a small cafe, the conversation flowing easily. "So," Lily asked, sipping her latte, "why do you come to my workplace every day? You can't possibly love fast food that much." Ryan chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "You caught me. It's not the food I'm drawn to, it's the company." Lily rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at her lips. "You're a smooth talker, I'll give you that." "It's not just talk," Ryan said, leaning forward. "You're different, Lily. You're real. I spend most of my time around people who only care about money and status. But you're honest, hardworking, and grounded. It's refreshing." Lily studied him for a moment, unsure whether to believe him. "Flattery won't get you anywhere, you know." "Who said I'm trying to get somewhere?" Ryan countered, his smile softening. Despite herself, Lily laughed. For the first time in a long time she felt seen, not as a fast food worker or a struggling young woman, but as a person. And against her better judgment, she began to let her guard down. As the weeks went by, Ryan's visits became a part of Lily's routine. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, though she still kept a measure of distance. Ryan, for his part, played the role of an attentive suitor perfectly. He asked about her day, remembered the small details she shared, and always found ways to make her smile. One evening, after a particularly busy shift, Lily walked out of the restaurant to find Ryan leaning casually against his car, waiting for her. "Tired?" he asked, handing her a cup of coffee. "A little," she admitted, taking the cup gratefully. "But it's a good kind of tired. Thanks for this." Ryan smiled, opening the passenger door for her. "Come on. Let's take a drive. You deserve a break." Lily hesitated for a moment before climbing in. As the car glided through the city streets, she let herself relax, enjoying the quiet hum of the engine and the warmth of the coffee in her hands. "Do you ever think about what you'd do if you didn't have to work so much?" Ryan asked, breaking the silence. Lily turned to him, surprised by the question. "All the time," she said. "I'd go back to school, maybe start my own business someday. But that's a long way off." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "What kind of business?" Lily hesitated, unsure if she should share her dream. But something about Ryan's genuine curiosity made her open up. "A bakery," she said finally. "My mom used to bake all the time when I was a kid. It's one of the few good memories I have of her." "That sounds amazing," Ryan said, his voice warm. "You should do it." Lily laughed softly. "Easier said than done. Starting a business takes money and time, two things I don't exactly have in abundance." Ryan didn't reply immediately, his mind racing. He could give her both in an instant, but he knew better than to offer. Lily was proud, and he didn't want to risk ruining the trust they were building. Meanwhile, Ryan's friends were keeping a close eye on his progress. At their next gathering, Charles raised his glass with a smirk. "How's the project going, Ryan? Still confident you'll win the bet?" Ryan hesitated, his usual bravado faltering. "It's going well," he said, keeping his tone casual. "Better than expected." "Don't get too comfortable," Charles warned. "The clock's ticking. You've got a month left to seal the deal." Ryan forced a laugh, but inwardly he felt a twinge of guilt. Spending time with Lily had changed something in him. At first she was just part of a game, a challenge to prove his charm. But now he couldn't deny that he was genuinely drawn to her. Her kindness, her resilience, her honesty, it was unlike anything he'd encountered in his world of wealth and superficiality. "Relax, Charles," Ryan said, masking his inner turmoil. "I've got it under control." But did he? The thought lingered in his mind long after the conversation ended. One night, Ryan decided to take Lily to a high-end restaurant, a world far removed from the fast food joint where she worked. At first she was hesitant, worried about how she'd fit in. But Ryan assured her that she belonged there just as much as anyone else. As they entered the lavish dining room, Lily couldn't help but feel out of place. The chandeliers sparkled like diamonds, and the soft murmur of conversation was a far cry from the noisy kitchen where she spent most of her days. But Ryan's presence steadied her, and she focused on enjoying the moment. "You look amazing," Ryan said as they sat down, his gaze warm. "Thanks," Lily replied, her cheeks flushing. "This place is, wow." Ryan chuckled. "You deserve the best, Lily." They talked and laughed through the meal, their connection growing deeper with each passing moment. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to imagine a future with Ryan, one where she wasn't just a fast food worker, but a woman who had found her equal. But as the evening progressed, a familiar face appeared at the next table. It was Charles, along with a group of Ryan's friends. They greeted him with sly smiles, their presence a stark reminder of the bet. "Small world," Charles said as he approached their table. "Mind if we join you?" Lily looked at Ryan, her expression uncertain. Sensing her discomfort, Ryan forced a smile. "Actually, we were just about to leave. Another time." Charles's eyes glinted with amusement, but he stepped back. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." As they left the restaurant, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Who was that?" she asked. "Just some friends," Ryan replied, keeping his tone light. "Nothing to worry about." But Lily's instincts told her there was more to the story. The closer Ryan and Lily grew, the harder it became for him to reconcile his actions. The bet had started as a joke, a way to impress his friends. But now it felt like a ticking time bomb, threatening to destroy the fragile bond he had built with Lily. One evening as they walked along the river, Lily turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Of course, Ryan said, his heart pounding. Why me? She asked, her voice quiet. You could have anyone. So why are you here with me? Ryan hesitated, his mind racing for an answer. Because you're different, he said finally. You're real. You see the world in a way that I never could. Lily studied him for a moment before nodding. I just hope you mean that. Ryan swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He knew he couldn't keep the truth from her forever. But how could he tell her without losing her? The days that followed were a mix of joy and dread for Ryan. He and Lily were growing closer, spending more time together and sharing pieces of their lives they had never shown anyone else. But every moment of happiness was shadowed by the knowledge of the bet, a truth that threatened to shatter everything they'd built. Lily, meanwhile, found herself opening up to Ryan in ways she hadn't thought possible. He listened to her dreams without judgment, encouraged her ambitions, and made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. For the first time in years, she felt like her life was moving forward instead of standing still. One evening, as they sat in Ryan's sleek apartment overlooking the city, Lily noticed a photo on the mantel. It showed Ryan with a group of sharply dressed men, all laughing and holding drinks. Are these your friends? She asked, picking up the frame. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, that's Charles and the others. Lily frowned slightly. I feel like I've seen them before. Were they at the restaurant that night? Ryan's stomach tightened. Probably. They go to places like that all the time. Lily set the photo down, her expression thoughtful. They seemed different. Like they didn't take things seriously. Ryan forced a laugh. That's one way to put it. But Lily's words lingered in his mind. She had seen through his friends in a way he hadn't, and it only deepened his guilt. Ryan's internal conflict came to a head during a poker night with his friends. Charles was dealing cards, his smirk as infuriating as ever. So, Charles said casually, how's the project coming along? Ryan didn't respond, focusing on his cards. Oh, come on, Charles pressed. Don't tell me you've gone soft. It's just a game, remember? It's not a game anymore, Ryan said quietly, his voice firm. Charles raised an eyebrow. Oh, does this mean you're actually falling for her? Ryan glared at him. She's not what you think, Charles. She's smart, kind, and driven. She's everything we're not. The room fell silent, the weight of Ryan's words hanging in the air. For the first time he realized just how shallow his friends, and his own life, had been. You're in over your head, Charles said finally, his tone icy. You're forgetting who you are. No, Ryan said, standing up. For the first time, I'm starting to remember. He left the game early, ignoring the jeers and taunts that followed him out the door. Determined to prove his sincerity, Ryan began making small changes in his life. He cut back on the extravagant parties and distanced himself from Charles and the others. Instead, he focused on supporting Lily's dreams. One weekend, he surprised her with a trip to a local bakery run by a self-made entrepreneur. The owner, a kind older woman named Margaret, shared her story of starting the business from scratch, inspiring Lily to believe in her own potential. I could see you doing something like this, Ryan said as they left the bakery. You have the passion and the talent. Lily smiled, her eyes shining. Maybe someday. Ryan felt a surge of pride. For the first time, he wanted to be part of something meaningful, something real. But the shadow of the bet loomed over him, and he knew the truth would have to come out eventually. The turning point came at a charity gala Ryan had invited Lily to attend. She was nervous about entering his world, but he reassured her, promising to stay by her side. You belong here just as much as anyone, he said, holding her hand. The evening started smoothly, with Ryan introducing Lily to colleagues and business associates who were surprisingly warm and welcoming. For a moment, Lily allowed herself to believe that this could work, that she and Ryan could build a life together despite their differences. But the illusion shattered when Charles approached them, his expression smug. Lily, isn't it? He said, extending a hand. I've heard so much about you. Lily smiled politely, though she sensed an edge to his tone. Nice to meet you. I have to say, Charles continued, his voice dripping with condescension, Ryan really outdid himself this time. He always wins when it comes to our little games. Lily frowned, her smile faltering. Games? Ryan stepped in quickly, his tone sharp. That's enough, Charles. But it was too late. Lily's eyes darted between them, her expression a mix of confusion and suspicion. What's he talking about, Ryan? Nothing, Ryan said, his voice tense. Let's go. But Lily pulled her hand away. No. I want to know. Charles chuckled, clearly enjoying the moment. You mean he hasn't told you? Oh, this is rich. Let's just say your relationship started as An experiment? Ryan turned to Lily, his heart sinking. Lily, I can explain. She stared at him, her face pale. Is it true? Ryan opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. The truth was written all over his face. Lily shook her head, her voice trembling. I trusted you. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone in the middle of the room, his world crashing down around him. The crisp night air hit Lily's face as she stepped out of the gala, her heart pounding. Everything felt surreal, like the ground had been pulled out from beneath her. Ryan's words echoed in her mind, or rather, his lack of them. He hadn't denied it. He couldn't even look her in the eye and explain. She walked aimlessly down the street, her elegant gown feeling like a costume she no longer wanted to wear. The tears came unbidden, hot and angry. She had let herself believe in him, in them, and now it all felt like a cruel joke. Ryan stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, his mind racing. He wanted to chase after her to explain, but what could he say? The truth was ugly, and no amount of justification would erase the hurt he'd caused. Smooth move, Charles said, clapping him on the shoulder with a smirk. Told you it was a bad idea to mix business with pleasure? Ryan spun around, his eyes blazing. You think this is funny? Charles shrugged. It's what it is, man. You knew the rules. Rules? Ryan snapped. You think this was just a game? She's not a game. She's... He stopped himself, his chest heaving. Charles raised an eyebrow, his smirk fading. You actually care about her, don't you? Ryan didn't answer. He shoved past Charles and stormed out of the gala, determined to fix the mess he'd made. Lily returned to her apartment, stripping off the dress and pulling on her favorite pair of sweatpants and an old hoodie. She sank onto the couch, hugging a pillow as the events of the night replayed in her mind. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at the screen, seeing Ryan's name. She ignored it, but the buzzing persisted. Finally, she picked up, her voice flat. What do you want? Lily, please, Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. Let me explain. What's there to explain? She said bitterly. It was all a bet, wasn't it? You saw me as some kind of challenge, a way to prove something to your friends. It started that way, Ryan admitted. But it's not like that anymore. I swear, Lily, I care about you. You don't get to say that, she interrupted, her voice shaking. You don't get to tell me how you feel after what you did. Do you have any idea how humiliated I feel? How stupid I was to trust you? Ryan was silent, the weight of her words crushing him. Don't call me again, Lily said, her voice cold. We're done. She ended the call and threw her phone onto the couch, fresh tears streaming down her face. She had to be strong to focus on herself. She wasn't going to let him or anyone else define her worth. The next day, Lily threw herself into work, determined to distract herself from the pain. Her co-workers noticed the change in her, how she moved with purpose, her face set in a determined mask. During her break, she pulled out a notebook and began sketching ideas for her bakery. It was a dream she had always pushed to the back burner, telling herself she wasn't ready or didn't have the resources. But now something had shifted. She wasn't waiting for anyone to believe in her anymore. She would believe in herself. Her co-worker, Maria, peeked over her shoulder. What's that? Just some ideas, Lily said, closing the notebook. Look serious, Maria said with a smile. You thinking of starting something? Maybe, Lily said, her voice cautious but hopeful. I've been thinking about opening a bakery someday. Maria nodded. You should. You've got the talent and the drive. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Lily smiled faintly. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she didn't need anyone's permission or approval to chase her dreams. Meanwhile, Ryan was struggling to make sense of his feelings. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alone. His friends, once a constant presence, seemed shallow and meaningless. Even his wealth and success felt hollow without Lily. He began pulling away from his social circle, skipping parties and ignoring calls from Charles and the others. Instead, he focused on his work, pouring his energy into projects that had substance and purpose. He even started volunteering at local charities, hoping to understand the world beyond his bubble of privilege. But no matter what he did, he couldn't shake the guilt. He needed to make things right with Lily, not because he wanted her back, but because she deserved an apology, a real one. One evening, as Lily was closing up the restaurant, she saw Ryan standing outside, a bouquet of flowers in his hands. Her heart sank. She didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear whatever excuse he had prepared. But she couldn't ignore him forever. What do you want? She asked, stepping outside and crossing her arms. Ryan held out the flowers, his expression earnest. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Lily raised an eyebrow. That's it? You think flowers and an apology are enough? No, Ryan said quickly. I know they're not. But I had to try. I hurt you and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I need you to know that you weren't just a bet to me. You're so much more than that. Lily shook her head, her voice tight. You don't get to decide what I am to you. I'm not here to make you feel better about yourself. I know, Ryan said, his voice breaking. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm trying to change. Not for you, but because you showed me what kind of person I want to be. Lily stared at him, her emotions warring within her. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part couldn't forget the pain he'd caused. I'm glad you're trying, she said finally. But that doesn't change what happened. Ryan nodded, his shoulders slumping. I understand. I hope you find happiness, Lily. You deserve it. He turned and walked away, leaving Lily standing there, the flowers still clutched in her hand. As Ryan disappeared into the night, Lily stood motionless, the bouquet of flowers dangling in her hand. A part of her wanted to drop them right there and walk away, but another part couldn't bring herself to do it. She carried them back into the restaurant and placed them on the counter, staring at them for a long moment. The apology had stirred something in her, an acknowledgement of her pain, yes, but also a reminder of her resilience. Ryan's words lingered in her mind, but not because she was ready to forgive him. It was because they reminded her of what she already knew. Her worth didn't depend on anyone else. She grabbed her notebook from her bag and opened it, flipping through the pages filled with sketches and ideas for her bakery. This time she didn't just dream. She planned. She listed ingredients, cost estimates, and possible locations. For the first time, her vision began to feel tangible. Ryan, on the other hand, was finding it harder to shake the guilt. He threw himself into volunteer work, spending time at shelters and food drives, listening to people's stories and learning about the challenges they faced. It was humbling, and for the first time in his life, he began to understand how much privilege had shielded him from the world's realities. One evening, he helped a man named Greg move into transitional housing. Greg was in his mid-40s and had been living on the streets for years after losing his job and family. As they carried boxes into the small but cozy apartment, Greg turned to Ryan with a smile. Thanks, man, Greg said. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, Ryan replied honestly. Everyone deserves a chance. Greg chuckled, shaking his head. You know, most people like you don't even see us. It's like we're invisible. Ryan thought of Lily, how she had seen him for who he was, even when he hadn't deserved it. I'm trying to change that, he said quietly. Meanwhile, Lily's determination was paying off. She reached out to a local nonprofit that supported small businesses, applying for a grant to help launch her bakery. To her surprise, her proposal was accepted, and she was paired with a mentor who guided her through the process of securing a location and setting up the business. Maria, her coworker, became her biggest cheerleader. You're really doing it, Maria said one afternoon as they packed up the restaurant for the day. You're going to have your own bakery. Lily smiled, a mix of pride and nerves. I hope so. It's scary, but it feels right. It is right, Maria said firmly. You're going to be amazing. Lily's confidence grew as the pieces fell into place. She found a small storefront in a bustling part of town, one with just enough space for a cozy cafe and a kitchen. She spent late nights painting the walls, assembling furniture, and testing recipes. It was exhausting but exhilarating, a dream finally coming to life. Ryan heard about Lily's bakery through mutual acquaintances. He wanted to visit to see her success firsthand, but he hesitated. He didn't want to intrude or make her uncomfortable. Instead, he focused on continuing his own transformation. At work, he proposed a new initiative to support local businesses and underserved communities. His colleagues were skeptical at first, but Ryan's passion and clear plan won them over. Slowly, his reputation began to shift, from a self-absorbed playboy to a leader who genuinely cared about making a difference. But no matter how much he accomplished, he couldn't stop thinking about Lily. He missed her laughter, her resilience, her way of seeing the world. He didn't expect her forgiveness, but he hoped she could see that he was trying to become someone worthy of her respect. The opening day of Lily's bakery was a whirlwind. Friends, family, and curious passers-by filled the small cafe, sampling pastries and congratulating her on her achievement. Maria manned the counter, beaming with pride as she handed out cupcakes and cookies. Lily stood behind the register, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had done this. She had taken her pain and turned it into something beautiful, something that reflected her strength and determination. Toward the end of the day, as the crowd began to thin, Lily looked up to see Ryan standing in the doorway. He wasn't holding flowers or gifts, just a small box tied with a simple ribbon. He looked hesitant, as if unsure whether he was welcome. Lily took a deep breath and walked over to him. "Ryan," she said, her tone neutral. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about your bakery," he said, holding out the box. "I wanted to see it for myself. And I wanted to give you this." Lily took the box and opened it to find a beautifully crafted rolling pin engraved with the words, "Dream Big." She ran her fingers over the letters, her heart softening despite herself. "Thank you," she said quietly. "It's beautiful." Ryan nodded, relief flickering across his face. "You've done something incredible here, Lily. I'm so proud of you." Lily studied him, searching for any trace of the man who had hurt her. But all she saw was sincerity and a hint of sadness. "Ryan," she began, her voice steady. "I appreciate the gesture, but I need you to understand something. What you did hurt me more than I can put into words. And while I'm glad you're trying to change, that doesn't erase the past." "I know," Ryan said, his voice soft. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know how much you've inspired me." Lily nodded, her heart conflicted. "Thank you for saying that. But this is my time now. I need to focus on me." Ryan smiled faintly, his eyes shining with admiration. "You're amazing, Lily. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." He turned to leave, but Lily called after him. "Ryan." He stopped, glancing back. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. "And I hope you learn to see yourself the way you saw me." Ryan nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thank you, Lily. I'll never forget you." As he walked out the door, Lily felt a sense of closure wash over her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Over the next few weeks, Lily threw herself into running the bakery. It was harder than she had anticipated, with long hours and endless tasks, but she loved every second of it. Her days started before sunrise, kneading dough and baking pastries, and ended long after dark, balancing accounts and planning the next day's menu. The neighborhood quickly embraced her bakery. Regulars began stopping by not just for her signature cinnamon rolls but also for the warmth and kindness that seemed to fill the small cafe. Parents brought their kids for after-school treats, and friends gathered at the cozy tables to catch up over coffee. Maria was always there, her energy contagious. "We're going to need more of those chocolate chip cookies," she said one afternoon, peering at the nearly empty display case. "They're flying off the shelves?" Lily smiled, wiping flour off her hands. "I'll get started on another batch." The sound of the door opening drew her attention, and she looked up to see a familiar face. Greg, one of the men Ryan had helped during his volunteer work, stepped inside, his expression tentative. "Hi," he said, glancing around. "I heard about this place. Thought I'd check it out." "Welcome," Lily said warmly. "What can I get for you?" Greg ordered a coffee and a muffin, then hesitated. "You're Lily, right? The one who owns this place?" "That's me," Lily said, handing him his order. Greg nodded, a small smile on his face. "Ryan told me about you. He said you're one of the strongest people he's ever met." Lily blinked, caught off guard. "He said that?" "Yeah," Greg replied. "He talks about you a lot. Says you're the reason he's trying to be better." Lily didn't know what to say. She watched Greg take a seat, his presence a quiet reminder of how much Ryan had changed. It stirred something in her, an acknowledgement that people weren't static. They could grow even if the scars of the past remained. Ryan's own life was continuing to evolve. His initiative to support local businesses and underserved communities was gaining momentum, earning praise from colleagues and the media alike. He had thrown himself into the work, finding a sense of purpose he'd never known before. One day, as he reviewed proposals for the next phase of the program, his assistant knocked on the door. "You have a visitor," she said. Ryan looked up to see Charles standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. It had been months since they'd last spoken, and Ryan felt a wave of unease. "What do you want?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone neutral. Charles stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to see how you're doing." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you care?" Charles smirked, though there was less malice in it than before. "You've changed, you know. The old Ryan wouldn't have shut me out." "The old Ryan didn't know what mattered," Ryan said bluntly. Charles nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Look, I just wanted to say, I was wrong. About you, about Lily, about everything. You proved me wrong." Ryan leaned back in his chair, studying his former friend. "Why are you really here, Charles?" Charles hesitated before answering. "Because I miss having you around. And because I wanted to tell you that what you're doing, it's impressive." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "Thanks. But I'm not doing it for you." "I know," Charles said with a faint smile. That's why it's working. Back at the bakery, Lily was preparing for a special event, a community baking class for kids. She had spent weeks planning it, gathering supplies and spreading the word to local families. The day of the event, the bakery buzzed with excitement as children decorated cookies and parents watched with smiles. As Lily moved through the crowd, helping with frosting and sprinkles, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what she had dreamed of, not just a business but a place where people could come together. "Excuse me," a woman said, catching Lily's attention. "Are you the owner?" "Yes," Lily said, turning to her. The woman smiled warmly. "I just wanted to say thank you. My daughter's having the time of her life and it means so much to us. You've created something really special here." Lily's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you. That means a lot." As the event wound down and the last guests trickled out, Lily stood in the quiet bakery, surveying the remnants of the day. There were crumbs on the floor and smudges of frosting on the tables, but to her, it was perfect. Maria walked over, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Looks like it was a hit." Lily laughed, taking a cup. "I'd call it a success." Maria hesitated, then said, "You know, Ryan stopped by the other day. He didn't stay long, but he was asking about you." Lily sighed, her emotions a complicated mix. "What did he say?" "Just that he's proud of you," Maria replied. "And that he hopes you're happy." Lily stared into her coffee, her thoughts swirling. She wasn't ready to forgive Ryan, but she couldn't deny that his actions had made a difference, not just in her life but in the lives of others. Months had passed and Lily's bakery had become a cornerstone of the community. Her customers were more than patrons, they were neighbors, friends, and even collaborators. The bakery hosted regular events, from book clubs to workshops, and its walls were adorned with thank you notes and drawings from children who loved the place. One day, as Lily was going through receipts in the back office, Maria walked in with a curious look on her face. "You've got a visitor," Maria said, her tone teasing but warm. Lily glanced up, her heart skipping a beat. "Who is it?" Maria smirked. "You'll want to see for yourself." With a mix of anticipation and caution, Lily walked out to the front of the bakery. Standing near the counter was Ryan, holding a small envelope. He looked different, not in appearance but in demeanor. There was a quiet humility about him now, a far cry from the man she had first met. "Hi," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Hi," Lily replied, crossing her arms. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to give you something," Ryan said, holding out the envelope. Lily hesitated before taking it. She opened it carefully, revealing a letter and a certificate. Her eyes scanned the words, her breath catching as she realized what it was. A donation in her name to a nonprofit that provided grants to aspiring entrepreneurs. "I thought it was the best way to honor what you've built," Ryan said. "Your bakery has done so much for this community, and I wanted to help others like you make their dreams come true." Lily looked up, her emotions swirling. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan met her gaze, his eyes earnest. "Because you changed me, Lily. You showed me what it means to care about something bigger than myself. I don't expect forgiveness or anything else. I just wanted you to know how much you've inspired me." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing his words. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the depth of his transformation. And while the pain of the past couldn't be erased, she found herself letting go of the anger she had held onto for so long. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice soft. "Not just for this but for trying to be better." Ryan smiled faintly, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "You deserved better from the start." "I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner." Lily nodded, the tension between them easing. "You've come a long way, Ryan. I can see that." He took a step back, giving her space. "If you ever need anything, you know where to find me." With that, he turned and walked out of the bakery, leaving Lily standing there with the envelope in her hands. She felt a sense of closure, not just with Ryan but with herself. She had built a life she was proud of, and no one could take that away from her. Later that evening, as Lily closed up the bakery, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the hard work, it had all led to this moment. She was stronger now, more sure of herself than ever. As she locked the door and turned toward home, she realized that she wasn't walking away from Ryan's chapter in her life. She was walking toward her own future, one filled with possibility. For Ryan, the visit to Lily's bakery marked the final step in his journey of redemption. He had spent months working to become the person she had seen glimpses of, the man who cared more about others than his own ego. He didn't know what the future held, but he felt at peace knowing he had tried to make things right. That night, as he stood on the balcony of his apartment, looking out over the city, He felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. Not just for himself but for the world he wanted to be a part of. A world where people lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down. Lily and Ryan's paths had diverged, but their story wasn't one of regret. It was a story of growth, of learning to see the world, and themselves, differently. And in the end, that was the lesson they both carried forward. That even in the face of pain and mistakes, there was always room for change, for hope, and for a new beginning.